Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. This is the Thursday, June 4th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dre Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's get right down to business, folks. We have so little time, as always. You know, most times I have so many other articles for you, and I never get through any of them. Today, I'm hoping to get through each and every one of them. We got a lot to talk about, so I hope you'll stick with me. Lots of topics you'll want to hear about for sure. And I think the first and most important topic we need to discuss today is what's happening in this war yet again. And by the way, I apologize for my late releases of the program. The last couple of days I've had some work where I record my show, and I've had to release a show later on in the evening. So for those of you that listen much later, I do apologize. But again, I'm always glad to be with you, and I'm always glad to release this information. In the last 2 days, there has been some very, very relevant and urgent information for you. And that's why I want to discuss this topic with you first, since we're back to our regular programming time. This comes out of the New York Post. It says here, why Trump isn't rushing back into war with Iran. Now, let's read what it says here. It says, Trump says he has repeatedly warned Iran that military action remains on the table if nuclear negotiations collapse. But nearly 2 months after the fragile ceasefire was declared, the White House remains willing to take the diplomatic path, despite repeated Iranian military provocations. Here's the problem. And again, you know this because you listen to my show. This information I received were from two very reliable sources that got their information from somebody reliable in the Pakistani government. Intelligence, if you will. Now, they didn't release their name or their source. However, I trust these two. These two are very reliable. And that's why I'm relaying this information to you. The information that was given to them was that no talks until the fighting between Israel and Lebanon and Israel and Gaza cease. That means the fighting stops 100%. There's no going back and forth. The fighting has got to stop, and it has to stay that way. Now, whether or not Trump can get Netanyahu to do this is a complete different story. We have no idea. History tells us probably isn't going to happen. Netanyahu has never honored any type of ceasefire between his country and any other country. He's all about greater Israel, mowing the lawn. You name it, Netanyahu is on his own timetable. So we don't know if this is going to stop. However, if it is able to stop, there may be negotiations that will continue. There may be that possibility. But the information that was acquired talks directly about how the Iranians have stated that the negotiations are pretty much off the table, though, at this point, with the United States. And I'm reading from Right Scoop right now. They're very boldly saying that they have withdrawn from the negotiations. And as a result of this, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said late on June 3rd that no tangible progress has been made or achieved in the negotiation process with the United States. This is exactly what he said through their state media. His comments came as the United States and Iran struggle to finalize the details of a deal that is meant to see the sides extend their truce by 2 months and Iran reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping. Again, I don't know if that will happen. But to reiterate my first point, the two sources I had, Larry Johnson, Pepe Escobar, again, highly reliable. They stick to their word. They said that from their source, they found out that Iran was going to withdraw from these negotiations, from the ceasefire. That means the talks have been stalled. And here you are. You're hearing right here. Iran says there's been no progress in these talks. Certainly not over an interim peace deal. And the fighting has persisted in Lebanon, despite Washington's declaration that there's a ceasefire between Israel and the country. Again, it's going on. So if this is happening, nothing else progresses, folks. Now, this puts Netanyahu in the light that Trump shown to him. He said to him, listen, the world sees you as being the provocateur in all this. Everyone's going to hate you. Well, look what they're doing. They're defying Trump. And I thought Trump said Netanyahu does everything he tells him to do. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is Netanyahu does what he wants. He tells Trump what he wants. And he gets what he wants. Now, you saw the back and forth between the two. I don't even want to play that garbage to you. Did you really yell at him? Oh, yeah, I really yelled at him. Okay. Now, whatever the phone call was, and it could have gone that way, I have no idea. I don't really care. What I do care about is Netanyahu going to listen to President Trump? And the probably likely response to that is probably not. We hope he does. We'd love to see the fighting stop. We'd love to see a peaceful negotiation persist. Is it going to happen? Probably not, though. Which brings me to my next point. If the Iranians do not see any meaningful progress in this, they will likely, this was the second point of what they have figured out, if Iran were to leave the negotiations, withdraw from the ceasefire, the next step would be to leave and withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is the treaty that prevents them from developing nuclear weapons or extending their stockpiles and all that other great stuff, which Iran has signed, right? The country that's so-called the number one state sponsor of terrorism, which is a complete and utter lie. However, they are prepared to leave this. Now, we talk about President Trump and, of course, peace and preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. This puts them on path to doing so, which comes to my third part. And this is what was told to both Pepe and Larry Johnson. Again, two sources I find very credible, very honest, very reliable, and they believe their source. And so far, what their source has said was that, yes, they're going to leave these negotiations because they don't see any purpose in it, which we know happened on Monday. And if nothing can come as a result, if the sides can't come together, then they're going to leave the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That will happen. And then point number 3, Iran will soon, this is the biggest part about all this, no one else is telling you, you're not seeing us on the mainstream media anywhere, a couple very important podcasts, maybe, but no one else is telling you this, folks. You're getting gold right now. Iran will demonstrate the capacity to detonate a nuclear bomb. Now, if you're the United States and you're hearing this, and your whole goal was to get Iran, first of all, to have regime change, never the opportunity to even come close to building a nuclear weapon, this is obviously very, very upsetting to you. We don't want to see proliferation of nuclear weapons in this world. It doesn't lead to anything positive, I don't think. But what I do believe, at this point, what the Iranians have dealt with in the past year with the United States, from June of 2025 till right now, they've been engaged in 2 different sets of negotiations. Both times the United States has attacked their country along with Israel. Israel has always gone first. The United States follows soon thereafter. They view what took place as a hegemonic escalation in the region to exert their power. The Iranians have come to the table both times. By the way, the first time they were going to give us everything we wanted, too. So if Trump really wanted everything, he let Netanyahu destroy it. But now they've realized there is no negotiating with the United States. The United States is not acting in good faith. And the only way they want to see any sort of real change would be through the the Senate rather, ratifying a treaty between the two countries. In other words, the United States is not going to aid and abet any other foreign countries, or the United States themselves will not attack Iran. They're in a permanent ceasefire with each other. Peace negotiations. That's exactly the way Iran will move forward. And I think, by the way, you'll see other countries, Russia, China, Pakistan, other countries like this will move forward in that direction too. Because Trump can't be held to his own word. I know you don't like to hear this, but this is the truth of the matter. Twice during negotiations, in good faith, we have set up additional meetings, and in between those meetings, we have struck them. You can't get away from that fact, folks. That's the fact of the matter. Then you could say, well, Iran, this, Iran. Doesn't matter. Marco Rubio talking about going to Israel to get ready for another round of negotiations with the two dunces, Witkoff and Kushner. And before that takes place, we decided to bomb them while amassing a massive armada in the outside of the Persian Gulf. I mean, it was just as clear as mud. But the Iranians have had enough, and now they've figured out finally. And by the way, I don't believe that they had a bomb prior to February 20th. I do not believe that. I believe what Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had issued, the fatwa, saying, listen, this is anti-Islamic. This leads to mass destruction. We don't want to have this arsenal. And I believe truly that they did not have the weapon. However, his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, who had to witness his father dying, his mother dying, his wife dying, his child dying, other people around him that are very close to him in the IRGC dying. There are reports that he's been injured by what took place. He could have easily died as well. Trump was the one that has installed this hardliner government right now, much of whom fought in the Iran-Iraq war, which Iraq acted as their proxy throughout this war. We gave them chemical weapons to use on the Iranians. Some 70,000 Iranian civilians died between 1980 and 1988. At least 300,000 total, by the way, perished in this war that we inflicted upon them through our proxy, Saddam Hussein. Do you think the Iranians would be a little miffed about that, folks? I think we would be mad about that too, wouldn't we? Think for a second. Let's say the United Kingdom funneled all this money, all these resources into Canada, and Canada attacked the United States, and for 8 long years we fought each other. The UK gave them chemical weapons, and as a result of this 8 years of fighting, we lost 70,000 Americans, civilians, not even soldiers. And on top of that, we lost, again, a total of 300,000 Americans. First of all, do you think we would like Canada very much? We would hate Canada. To a T, we would hate Canada. And we would definitely hate the United Kingdom for doing that as well. So we've got to look at everything in the bigger picture here. Khamenei understands this. He knows exactly what the United States did during the 1980s. So does Arachi. So does Pezeshkian. A lot of these men fought in this war. They understand completely what took place and why it took place. So what his position now is, I do believe it's the North Korea approach to this. It's better at least to have a bomb and demonstrate you have a bomb and be left alone versus trying to constantly come to the table with the United States. Sadly, that's where we have come to, unfortunately. So it brings me no pleasure to say this to you, but this is the information that they possibly have and will soon demonstrate on Iranian soil that they have a nuclear weapon arsenal. Now, I would imagine they would have multiple rounds of weapons. They wouldn't just detonate one. I think it does escalate the situation in the region. If Israel knows, and the world knows, that Iran has a nuclear weapon, for instance, I would imagine that Netanyahu would do whatever he could to, again, dismantle that. Whether it be bombing nuclear facilities or what have you, I couldn't tell you for sure. But I think you would see that approach. You would see the war beginning to strike yet again. But here's the last part about what they were both told. Khamenei instructed the IRGC. By the way, the IRGC is supposed to take control of the country whenever they're engaged in a war. That's why you're seeing the IRGC right now heavily involved in what's going on, not just the Iranian military. But he instructed the IRGC that if ever the Iranian civilization as a whole is jeopardized, to use a nuclear weapon. So this is where we have pushed the Iranians. Tell me, is this part of the art of the deal, ladies and gentlemen? Does anybody think this is a great position to be in right now, that we've pushed the Iranians in this position? We didn't get regime change. We didn't get a nuclear deal with them. We're not stopping enrichment. We keep hearing about the 60%. Well, hey, any country can enrich to 90%. Most of you probably don't know that. So I'm getting sick of this nonsense that, oh, well, they enriched us to a certain level. It's really high. So we have to go in there and start bombing this country right now. Why would you bomb a country during negotiations, unless, of course, the negotiations were simply a facade? You never were going to negotiate with them. Your whole goal was to get them to the table Make them think that everything's okay, and then, of course, you strike them when they're not looking. Well, Iran this time has been ready and willing and waiting. And we've seen their arsenal and what it can do. So we could talk about destroying their Navy, which, again, we haven't destroyed their entire Navy, or their Air Force, which, again, really is just their missile system and their drone system capabilities. But they've done a pretty decent job of fighting off the United States, folks. Unfortunately, I have to say that to you because they've done that. They've successfully closed the Strait of Hormuz, which they said they would. And they haven't deterred really anything. They have deterred a lot. But this is the truth of the matter. None of this needed to happen right now, unfortunately. And so I say this to you with no, happiness about this. This is very, very sad. A very, very sad day. They were pushing nations into building nuclear weapons to fight off the United States. Where is the diplomacy? Where is the professionalism? That we can't sit down and negotiate with people? President Trump ripped up the JCPOA, which allowed them, by the way, to enrich to whatever level they really wanted to. Again, 0 to 90% is in that friendly range. You can always use that for, again, medical, civilian purposes. That's just the truth of the matter. Now, you're hearing some people say, well, there's no reason to enrich that to that level. You don't really have to do that. Again, under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, that's in the safe range. You don't have the capacity at 90% yet. Now, of course, you're not too far away from getting where you need to, the 92, the 94%, in order to create a nuclear weapon. But this is where we've pushed them now. This is exactly where we've pushed them. And again, the lies that the nuclear dust is buried somewhere underground. So again, the stories keep changing. The goalposts keep changing. For example, they were weeks away from building a nuclear bomb if we didn't go in and let Israel do what they wanted to do. But then we were told that the nuclear dust is buried somewhere underground, that they can't get access to. Well, then, I'm sorry. How are they going to build a bomb if the nuclear dust is somewhere underground? The two things don't add up. Then we were told it wasn't regime change. Then we were told, of course, that Israel wanted to go in because they knew that Khamenei was meeting with his top IRGC leaders and whatnot. It would be a great time to hit. The country will fall in, 3 to 5 days. We'll get our regime change. And everything will be great. We'll totally disarm the Iranians. And then it changed into, well, we've got to get rid of their ballistic missile program too. I mean, it just was ridiculous, folks. And as a result of this, we are in a situation now where we have pushed the Iranians to build a nuclear weapon, more than likely. Again, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope we can hopefully work something out. But you're going to need Congress on board with this. You're going to need President Trump on board with this. His administration needs to be on board with this. But I think it's interesting, too. You've seen the rhetoric of President Trump really slow down a lot since last Friday. By the way, I was also told, well, I wasn't told, but what they have stated, rather, was that Marco Rubio received this information from the Pakistani prime minister last Friday. So they're very much aware of what's going on. Can you imagine getting that call as Marco Rubio, as National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, that now, yes, the Iranians are going to be building a nuclear bomb? I mean, this is where we have pushed the Iranians. This is, again, disgraceful. Absolutely 100% disgraceful. Well, let me play you President Trump really quick right now, just so we can hear the difference in his rhetoric now, certainly when talking about a deal. And again, the stance he's taken is completely changed. Before it was, we'll bomb this, we'll bomb that. Hey, Oman has listened to us, we'll bomb them too. We'll bomb everybody. We'll just keep bombing. We'll give them 48 hours, 24 hours, 15 hours, and then we'll start bombing away. And hey, if they don't open that Strait of Hormuz, hey, we'll continue to bomb them. His stance since last week has changed greatly, and that again gives me poised to say to you that likely he's received some information that if things escalate too much, you will see that demonstration of a nuclear bomb inside of Iran being detonated, which I don't think anybody wants to see. But anyways, here he was speaking in the Oval Office to the press, and this is what he said regarding a deal with the Iranians. Take a listen.
Is the ceasefire with Iran still on?
Well, there's a reason for everything. And we hit them pretty hard. the night before, and actually last night. And when it was explained to me, I said, all right, so we'll do that. But we've been hitting them pretty hard, a little bit. So there is a reason for certain things, and there's usually a reason that sometimes makes sense. But they did something, not a big deal. We got it, we nipped it in the bud very quickly, as we do. We're the greatest military in the world. But some people would say they were slightly provoked because we took a strong action for a different reason. So they were reciprocating. Yep.
Mr. President, can you explain?
I hear the negotiation itself has gone very well, actually. Very well.
Mr. President, yes,
It could happen. I mean, if it happens, and it might not happen, who knows? But if it happens, it could happen like over the weekend.
Oh, good, over the weekend. Well, I'll be holding my breath for that, right, folks? This comes out of the right scoop as well. So again, he's reiterating what took place with the striking earlier this week. But notice he doesn't want to retaliate. This would have been a prime time for Trump to say, listen, I can now go in and start doing what I want to do. Look, they've attacked us. And yet he's very, very reluctant to do anything. And he's not using the usual rhetoric, right? Bomb them into the Stone Age. Bomb the entirety of the civilization. There won't be an Iran anymore. All these things that he has said. By the way, I didn't say verbatim that's what he said, but this is what he was alluding to before. Wiping out an entire civilization of people. Again, disgusting language, I believe, coming from a U.S. president. But here it says the U.S. military is confirming that Iran fired multiple ballistic missiles and drones tonight. This would have been on Monday evening. At both Kuwait and Bahrain, but they were all intercepted and fell short of their targets. CENTCOM then reported that U.S. forces successfully defeated multiple Iranian ballistic missiles and drones and conducted self-defense strikes on Qeshm Island in response to attempted attacks by Iran across the Middle East on June 2nd. Iran then launched several ballistic missiles towards regional neighbors, however, all failed to hit their intended targets. And by the way, I also know that the Iranians had launched an anti-ship missile, and I was told it did strike a U.S. vessel, though I haven't been able to confirm that. So it seems that, again, both sides are kind of seem to be testing one another to see which one follows through with what they're going to do. But I don't know how Trump proceeds with this. Because on one end of it, if he goes the way of the Iranian deal, their 10 points, their 14 points, whatever it may have been, he's going to be giving up a lot of leverage. And it's going to look like he's giving them exactly everything they want. A total system in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. moves out of the Persian Gulf, right? We already know, again, thanks to Larry Johnson, Pepe Escobar, among others, that Saudi Arabia and Qatar now want to distance themselves from the United States. They want the LUD air base inside of Qatar to be closed within the next 9 months. This is the truth of the matter. We're losing the hegemony of the region. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it certainly doesn't shout success, which Trump does not want to be seen as unsuccessful in this war. He wants to be seen as a great leader, a great wartime leader. He disarmed the crazy Iranians, right? But that's certainly not going to be the way this story is written, because we haven't disarmed them. We haven't weakened them. In fact, their position now is stronger now than ever. We didn't get the regime change. We didn't get the uprising from the civilians or the factions inside the country, the Mujahideens, the Baluchis, the Kurds, the Arabs. They didn't rise up like we thought they would have. And the ones that did were obviously stopped. Again, look what took place during the January riots that were, again, fomented by Mossad, CIA, MI6. Again, we gave them arms and they still were able to take over the government, unfortunately for them. So we're seeing a little bit going back and forth here. It does seem like the Iranians are, again, ready to resume the fighting at any time. Let's be very, very clear that it is the Iranians that did not want a ceasefire. It was the United States that asked for the ceasefire with the help of Pakistan and China, again, pressing the Iranians to meet with the United States. We're able to make these negotiations begin to start happening. We're seeing nothing meaningful come as a result, and because Trump is not willing to play ball, and of course we have Netanyahu that is also not willing to play ball with the Iranians. We're still hearing the same exact rhetoric coming from both. The Iranians cannot have a nuclear weapon. We've got to stop the nuclear weapon. We've got to stop the ballistic missile program. Again, if you haven't militarily defeated a country, what makes you think that they are going to give you anything? Again, it's foolish to think so. But this is what we're being told right now, unfortunately. Now, I will also tell you that U.S. President Donald Trump has privately told aides that he does not intend to restart a full-scale war with Iran unless Tehran is directly responsible for the deaths of American troops. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. The report also suggests that Trump remains reluctant to plunge into the region, into a broader conflict despite rising tensions and repeated violations of the ceasefire that took place in April. Again, ask yourself the question, why would he be reluctant? We know that he's upset that the War Powers Resolution has limited his ability to do what he wants to do. I would have expected him to be happy about it, too. Hey, look, the Congress says we've got to hold back, we've got to limit ourselves. Let's pull out of the region. I think that would be the best thing, don't you? We just get the hell out of there and then work on negotiations afterwards. At least the Iranians would see the naval blockade removed, which again is one of their positions they definitely want before they even talk about nuclear weapons. And let me just say one more thing about this. You know, Trump could say he sets a red line for military escalation. I don't believe he's going to do that now at this point, because now he knows he's pushing them into a position where they would build a nuclear weapon, which we definitely do not want. And he does not want to be seen as the president that allowed them to do so after 47 years. Again, take that as you will. But what I think is very interesting about all of this is that Trump is in a position where he could say, listen, the Congress has told us that they voted against this war. We are pulling out. Let's get out of the region. Let's move away from the fighting. And I think if we can do that, if we could show that, listen, the United States is pulling back. He doesn't say, victory or otherwise. He could just say we're simply moving out of the region, and now we're talking to the Iranians. I do believe if we would do something similar to that and show good faith that we're getting the hell out of there, he'll never accept fault for this, of course, but if he did, that would be a good thing as well. But if he were able to do this, just that small gesture of, again, bringing back our fleet back to the United States, moving them out of the Persian Gulf, stop with this stupid blockade that really doesn't even do that much as it is, stop the firing, certainly from other Gulf Arab states. If he were to do that, I think he could still meet with the Iranians and prevent the creation of a nuclear weapon. Now, does that mean that the Iranians would still leave the non-proliferation treaty? They could still do that. I still think that could be possible. But I think we can get an agreement with them still if we use real diplomacy. I'm not talking about sending Witkoff and Kushner. First of all, it's not serious. None of the two are serious. They're not diplomats. They don't know anything about the region. They're real estate developers, for God's sakes. What the hell are we doing? Send somebody serious with some diplomatic experience to the region that understands the country and actually sit down with them and hash out an agreement. By the way, that'll take quite a bit of a long time, as would any agreement like that. But at least you're on a step to the right direction. They don't believe in when they send Kushner and Witkoff. They don't take it seriously. They understand it's a joke. So let's be serious about this. Let's get ourselves in a position where we can come back to the table with them. By the way, did you notice that Trump is now saying he wants to meet the Ayatollah? Before, hey, I don't know who I'm talking to. This guy's nothing. I think he's weak. I think he's this and that. And now all of a sudden he wants to meet him. Do you think the Ayatollah wants to meet the guy who allowed the attack on his father's compound, killing him? An 87-year-old man? 86, 87? Killing his wife, killing his baby daughter, killing his mother. Do you think Mojtama Khamenei would want to even look at President Trump? Probably not. I'll just be honest with you. Probably not. Any red-blooded male with a spine would probably not want to sit down and break bread with somebody like that. I know I wouldn't. So the idea that he's making these odd gestures now. Oh, I want to meet him. Oh, yes. We're working towards a deal. Oh, they hit us, but hey, we hit them too. Let's just pause for a little bit. I think Trump sees the writing on the wall. I think Rubio probably the smartest one of them all. That doesn't say too much. But I think we could actually get a decent negotiation going if we take our troops out of the region, if we really stop this, and if Israel stops the fighting in Lebanon and Gaza. Because, again, that is number one on their list. Nothing moves forward unless Israel stops what they're doing. So the test is on right now. Can Trump get Netanyahu to stop the fighting in Gaza and Lebanon? That's a big if, but this is exactly where we are. And until we see that, we have no negotiation at all. And by the way, the Iranians are disengaged from it. It's almost like we're not talking to them, and we're not talking to them. Trump says we're talking to them, but we're not. The Iranians have said we're not talking to the United States. Now, they may be talking to the Pakistanis, kind of as a middleman, or a mediator, if you will. But there's no direct talks between Tehran and D.C. Again, it makes it all the more ridiculous, I think, folks. So, again, I wanted to relay this information to you. This is very important information. You're not hearing this anywhere on the mainstream media, sadly enough. But I wanted you to know this, that yes, the Iranians have talked about the possible creation of a nuclear weapon, and that if they proceed with it, they will detonate that to show the entire world sooner rather than later. So I hope right now we could see if President Trump is serious about this, serious about national security and safety, or is he going to go down the route of letting Iran do this? What will he do at this point? Because, again, there's a very easy way out of this, folks. It's called diplomacy. It's called sitting down like civilized people and hashing this out. But I think we've pushed them in this position. This is my own belief. We've pushed them in this position, and now they really, really believe that they've got to go the way of North Korea, because nobody bothers North Korea anymore. I think they just want to be left alone. I think that's exactly what they want. So only time will tell. Again, you're not hearing this anywhere else, so you're welcome. All right, let's move on. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to some domestic issues right now that are very, very important that we want to discuss today. And in other news, we talked about the primary races that took place just yesterday. Tuesday now. And it seems here, this is coming from The Hill, President Trump now has decided, he's declared now, that Democrats are trying to steal the elections in California. As we see the race's results come in, we're now expected to take several days to weeks to decide who is going to continue on to the general election. Now, California tends to be not able to finalize the results of elections for some time after the election. Now, some of you will say, well, Gerace, there's millions of people that vote, roughly 10 million. It takes a while. And if you caught yesterday's show, I told you, okay, well, then how does India in 24 hours count 640 million ballots? How is that possible that they're able to do such a thing? I mean, again, I'm very open to figuring out why. We have some of the biggest tech giants in the world in Silicon Valley. They can't figure out how to get a sufficient program to count reasonably. How are we able to count paper ballots? In every single election before we got these ridiculous electronic machines. And by the end of election night, we would know exactly who was likely going to be winning that race. I wish we can go back in time to figure all that out. Don't you, folks? I think so. Now, I do want to say one thing, too, that's, again, very, very important about what's taking place right now, though. He's alluding, of course, to the fact that there is cheating going on. Now, he went on to Truth Social, as he usually does. By the way, Truth Social, he hasn't said a lot about Iran lately, has he? But he is talking about this now. He says the Democrats are at it again. They are trying to steal the governor of California primary and the mayor of Los Angeles primary, away from two great Republican candidates. Here we go with the very late and massive numbers of mail-in ballots. Yeah, he's not wrong. In another post, he said there is big cheating by the California Democrats. Votes are all tied up. May not be in for weeks. That's the way it always goes. But one thing I think is really, really interesting, when you look at, for example, the fact that at 8:01 p.m. on the election night in 2024, 8:01 p.m., 0% of the precincts reporting. They knew for damn sure that Kamala Harris was the winner and that Adam Schiff was the winner of the U.S. Senate race. Again, statewide races. But everything local took much, much longer. Isn't that interesting to you folks? What are they, Nostradamus in Sacramento all of a sudden? Of course not. Of course not. It's just a bunch of nonsense is what it is. But, I find these things, again, very funny. Not that they're funny, but the cheating is so blatantly obvious. That's probably the biggest part of the problem. By the way, I had a friend of mine who is from California send this to me yesterday. And it says here, red flag. It said 39.3% of the vote in. Karen Bass had 117,579 ballots cast for her. Spencer Pratt had 86,323 ballots cast. A little while later, though, we have 42.4% of the vote in. Karen Bass has 130,429 votes. And Spencer Pratt has 86,323 ballots. So, a massive percentage in votes coming in, giving her just over 13,000 votes. And Spencer Pratt, in all those votes that have been counted, gets 0% of the votes. Virtually every candidate received votes except for Spencer Pratt. This is amazing to me. Even Nithya Raman, who conceded her race yesterday, even she got 10,000 votes. Adam Miller, who nobody's ever heard of, even he got, I think it was just over 1,000. But Spencer Pratt remains exactly the same. And of course, his percentage of votes coming in was weakened because he didn't change. Does that make sense to anybody? One of the two front runners of the race gets 0% of the votes, even though roughly, from what I'm looking at here, some 15,000, I'm sorry, no, more than 15,000, but about 25,000 votes come in. He got none of them? Now, again, folks, I was born in the morning, but it wasn't yesterday morning. So something obviously is rotting in Denmark here. This is impossible that this could happen from a mathematical standpoint, by the way. When you have somebody who's got 4% of the vote getting over 1,000 votes in this latest vote dump, and the guy who's in second place, very, very close to Karen Bass, ends up getting absolutely nothing. Come on. Something isn't right here, and I think anybody who's reasonable would understand this. By the way, I don't think Trump is wrong with this at all. Not by a long shot. But what we're seeing right now, right in front of our eyes, you're seeing the Democratic machine take place. That's what you're seeing right now. Again, there's no way an anomaly like that could happen. That you count 25,000 votes and the second leading candidate in the race gets absolutely none of them. It's not like he got a couple. He got absolutely none of them. Ridiculous. And I got to tell you, Trump went on to talk about how, for instance, actually, he spoke with Miranda Devine. I got to play you this clip, too. Let me play you this clip because he talks about voting and what have you. And I think he's right about this. He's talking about the 2020 election, but we'll listen to what he has to say. It is a little long. It's about 1:30. I want you to hear exactly what he has to say, though. And we'll break it down and relate it to what's going on in California and how to solve the problem, which I think is the bigger aspect of all this.
Look, we had a rigged election. We can't have a rigged election. No. We can be nice about it. We can be politically correct. I don't want to say. I used to say that a year and a half ago, the election was rigged, and the cameras would literally turn off. Yeah. And the anchor would say, "Sir, you're not allowed to say that, Now nobody ever turns off the camera because it's been proven to be rigged. Look at what happened in Georgia. Look at all the stuff that we found out. It was a rigged election. Biden lost in a landslide. Yeah. And it's, to think that this could happen. Now, because of that, we have Russia, Ukraine. That would have never happened with me. Because of that, we had open border with 25 million, in many cases, criminal, not all.
And fentanyl deaths.
Everything.
Yeah.
He was a worse president, and we were laughed at all over the world as a country. We're not laughed at anymore. We have the hottest country anywhere in the world.
So
we have the most successful country anywhere.
So someone has to be punished, though, for that. So how do you do that?
Well, I don't
have to punish them all.
Yeah, I know. I'd rather not get into it. But
Are you confident something will happen?
I don't want to talk about it. But
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. The election was rigged. We know who rigged the election. We know it. We know everything now. We have information that nobody thought was possible. But when you get to office, all of a sudden people start giving you things. It was I'll tell you, 2024 was a great election. That was a lot. There's a lot of rigging going on there too.
Okay, so he said that with Miranda Devine, who I think is a great writer too, by the way. But here's the problem. You know who rigged the election? Who did it? Who rigged the election? I'm not saying he's wrong. But you know exactly who rigged the election, how it was done? And we've done nothing about it? What about the DOJ? And we're seeing it right in front of our eyes in California yet again. I mean, this is the way these things work in these states with zero voter ID laws. The ability to have these ballot harvesting take place, where they throw all these ballots in, run them through the machines, and then, of course, you see things like this, where you have a candidate get 13,000, another candidate get 10,000, another candidate get just over 1,000, and the Republican gets 0 votes. It's amazing to me, folks. Amazing to me. Here's what Trump should do. And I've said this so many times, and why he has it is beyond me. He has all the resources to do this, but he needs to forensic audit the machines in a state like California. You want to see things that are ripe for fraud? Go look at this mayoral race right now. Do an election forensic test on the machines. By the way, the only way you can figure this out too, by the way, I've listened to computer programmers, and these machines can be hacked too, by the way, so long as they connect to the internet, which these electronic machines do. And what you do is, you have to take I believe it's called the SIM card or the memory card out of it. I forget which one. But you take the card out, and that's the only way you can do that is by doing a forensic audit on the card. Then you can figure out if the votes were tampered with. If the machine was tampered with, that's how the votes change. And we know that they can do this. This information has been out for quite some time, too. Probably at least over 20 years. So why aren't we doing this? Let's get this ball rolling. Let's show the world, hey, let's go back to paper ballots, because look at the fraud for this is just too much. You're seeing races that are, again, being swayed by the Democratic Party who runs them. And we say nothing about this? Again, I ask you the question. How do you know when 0% of the precincts are reported that Kamala Harris won and Adam Schiff won? Yet it takes the congressional districts that are roughly about 750,000 voters tops. And by the way, not everybody votes. You can count 17 million ballots. You know exactly how 17 million people voted without the precinct coming in, yet somehow the congressional races take weeks on end to figure out exactly what happened. Now, this, again, folks, he needs to forensic audit these machines. Again, I would go to California, I'd go to New York, I'd go to Illinois, any state that has no voter ID laws, and I would look exactly at what's going on. I would check all those cards in the electronic machines. I would figure out what took place. Did someone hack the machine? Did someone get inside and rig them? If so, we've got to ban them. We've got to go back to paper ballots. We've got to go back to, again, the SAVE Act, which is a great act, that you have to show an ID to vote, a proper ID. And we need to make that system very difficult in order to get an ID. You can't be passing out 1 million different IDs to non-citizens like California did under Kamala Harris when she was Attorney General. Certainly don't want to do that. But here we go. We have the state law in California says that election officials can begin processing mail-in ballots when voters send them back, which cannot be later than 29 days ahead of the election day. This year would have been May 5th. Now, Newsom, great Gavin Newsom, right, who signs in laws, for example, that prevent voter ID from happening. But he acknowledged that the longer it takes to count mail-in ballots, the more mis- and disinformation spreads. This means we must do all that we can to tabulate votes quickly and accurately. Time is of the essence in preventing election lies from taking hold. Oh, yeah. Well, what are you doing about it, Gavin? Absolutely nothing. This guy doesn't do a damn thing. What is he, like a part-time podcaster now? Author somehow? Guy's an idiot. Does anyone actually believe Gavin Newsom races on bucks? I believe I have a bridge for you in Brooklyn I can sell you if you believe that too, by the way. Unbelievable. But this is where we are in California. And it's frustrating too, because you see no support for Karen Bass. You're telling me 40% of the people in LA are voting for Karen Bass right now? The woman who let the city burn? You're telling me she got 40% of the vote again? Really? Again, it's just so funny that anyone would even vote for this woman. The fact that anybody would vote for this woman after the massive incompetence by her and the people that work around her, people that she has appointed to a lot of these very important positions, is ridiculous in and of itself. In fact, it's an insult to anybody with any notion of, again, brains, that they would vote for this woman. A complete communist, a complete do-nothing, a zero, didn't do a damn thing she ran on, didn't fix the homeless problem, didn't fix the affordability problem, didn't do anything except collect a paycheck. And a pretty damn good one, too, by the way, for doing absolutely nothing. But again, no accountability. You're going to re-elect this woman? I mean, we've got to fix this voting in this country, and we need to fix it very, very fast, folks. That's all I'll say to you on that. And Trump has the ability to do this, too. He can get his DOJ to do this forensic auditing of these machines and figure out what's going on. All you need is one state to go down. All you need to do is go into one state. Go into California. I guarantee you it's ripe with fraud. Absolutely. And then you figure out what's going on, and you say, listen, we've got to abandon these electronic machines. It just doesn't work out right. It's not helping us out. And as a result of that, then you can make some real change. Then you can start doing paper ballots. Everyone gets a copy of their ballot. Everyone go online and check exactly how their votes tallied in their precinct. You can see how everyone votes, of course. Everyone gets a number. I've been saying this for quite some time now. It'd be a perfect system to do. And I could say, oh, good. I'm voter 247. I voted for Trump. I voted for Steve Garvey, for Senator. My congressman. Go down the list, go down all the measures, go down all the judges I voted for, see how my vote tallies up from everybody. Oh, look, I was voter number 150 that voted for President Trump in my precinct. Fantastic. Here's how my precinct added into my county. Look at that. Wonderful. Okay? This is how you do these things. This is how you make reasonable change. This is how you have people held accountable. Because anybody that goes in there now can say, oh, wait a minute. I'm voter 247. Said I voted for Kamala Harris. My carbon copy says I voted for President Trump. Something's wrong here. Something's completely wrong. And that's how you fix these problems. But the question is, will Trump do that? And the question I have to ask is, why is he not doing that? Why are we not forensic auditing the machines? Why are we not pushing John Thune to pass the SAVE Act? Let's get it to a vote. Let's get some election integrity in our country, of which we have absolutely none of, it seems. Oh, by the way, too, folks, President Trump says that he will now nominate Todd Blanche to serve as Attorney General. Nobody saw that coming, right? Of course he was. His former lawyer, former personal lawyer. And he does everything Trump wants, so why the hell wouldn't he put him in there? So the next step would be, obviously, would Congress, obviously, vote for him to be Attorney General? That's the next question, if he can pass that hurdle. But it seems like it will go accordingly. And that's all she wrote on that one. I don't think I need to expound too much on that, but that is happening now, because right now he's only the acting Attorney General. But again, he's going to do everything Trump wants. So there we go. Now, moving over to another part of the administration, let's take a look at this. Let's move over to this article out of the Financial Times. It says our U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has insisted the surge in inflation triggered by the Iran war will be a short-term blip. Huh, really? I mean, this is amazing to me. So the current level of inflation that we're experiencing is going to be a short-term blip, folks. Now, Bessent told a congressional committee hearing on Wednesday that the burst of higher prices would be transitory. How many times have we heard that? We heard that all throughout the Biden administration, too, haven't we? Everything will be transitory. Yeah, it's going to be just a short little while. Everything's going to be just fine. Don't you worry, you panicking you. And we hear this from the morons online today, don't we? I've been shouting out about this for quite some time, too. I said prices are going to go up as a result. We already saw the prices in oil go up, and as a result, the price of the pump went up. And when you offset the price of the pump, everything else follows suit. And we're seeing that right now. We saw consumer price inflation jump to a 3-year high of 3.8% in April, as prices are getting much more gradually higher, and they're spilling over to other parts of the economy. Now, here's what Bessent said here. He said, except for inflation, which is, I believe, going to be a short-term blip, the economic data is very strong. The jobs data has been very strong. Okay, well, again, I don't know what information he looks at. I would expect the Treasury Secretary to know what the hell he's talking about. We have very low GDP output. What was it, 1.6% in quarter one of this year? That's extremely low. We're seeing higher prices all across the board. We're seeing, again, job growth. Numbers always get revised over and over again, but we'll go over this more tomorrow during my economic report. But what I want to lay out for you right now is you're getting a lot of misinformation. And let me make this very, very clear to you that are listening. When you have 31% of the global oil supply, which comes out of the Strait of Hormuz, that is no longer in circulation, you're going to see higher prices across the board. Absolutely. This is industrials. This is for transportation. This is to get you to go where you need to go. That's a big problem. Now you're taking 31% of the oil supply out. So right now we're looking at roughly, before I started today's show, I think it was Brent crude was trading around $95 per barrel on the stock market. Right now it seems to be kind of in limbo right now. But the problem is we haven't seen the supply chain bottlenecking that we're going to see very, very soon. We have no more ships coming in the United States from the Persian Gulf with oil. And this is something you don't fix overnight. So even if the Strait of Hormuz opened up this second, as I speak to you, you still have oil refineries all throughout the Persian Gulf that are offline. And you still have at least, for instance, if you're going from the Persian Gulf to the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach and San Pedro, that's going to take you about 2 months to get there. Well, folks, one of the last ships just ported, I think it was the Friday before last. You have nothing coming in behind that. So the oil refineries in the United States haven't even seen the supply chain completely fall out. But we have had the CEO of Chevron saying, yeah, we're in lots of trouble now. We're about 1 billion barrels short of where we need to be right now. That has not yet hit the shelves yet. It hasn't hit the pumps yet. But it will very soon. When you take out 25% of the world's liquefied natural gas, again, for industrials, for transportation, for heating your homes, all these things are going to go up. When you look at 35% of the sulfur and urea, which are very important for crop production, for the metallic system that we use, big problem there. What are you going to do when farmers don't have the fertilizer to plant your food for you, or plant the food that is necessary to feed cattle and livestock in this country? What are you going to do then? And by the way, right now, you would be preparing for the fall harvest. What's going to happen when nothing is being planted in the United States, folks? It's going to be a big problem. That or your prices are going to go up significantly because, again, supply and demand tells us if fertilizer costs go up, what happens to you at the store? You're going to pay more for that same product. Again, supply and demand, folks. And by the way, this one's a big kicker, too. When you have 44% of the helium, by the way, there are other things, too, that come out of the region, but 44% of the global helium supply, which is needed for the manufacturing of chips, semiconductors, and what have you. We're trying to invest in AI, and I think the last thing we would want to do is to cause the prices to go up significantly, which, again, it will. Again, if you're chopping off that part of the supply chain. Not a good thing, folks. Not a good thing. So when Scott Bessent comes in and says, hey, this is just going to be temporary, we haven't seen the supply chain fall out yet. That's the problem. We haven't seen it. We've seen the prices go up a little bit. They were reacting to the war right away. We haven't seen the supply chain fall out yet. And we're going to see that very, very soon, probably within a couple of weeks, I would say. And then you're going to see price at the pump go up much more. Now, some of you are saying to yourself, Gervais, come on. I drove by the gas station yesterday on the way home from work. It was down 30 cents. It was down 40 cents here where I live. It was down 50 cents. Gervais, you're a panicking. You don't know what you're talking about, Gervais. I might as well go listen to somebody else. And I say to you, not so fast. Not so fast. What has Trump just done recently? He's dipped into the strategic petroleum reserves, which is intended for emergencies or for our military. That's why we've had them. And right now we're sitting at record lows because he's dumped them into the U.S. economy to ease the prices at the pump. Joe Biden did the same thing. Now, we haven't seen levels this low since 1984, and I say that to you because it's important to understand that the reserves were created in 1984 under President Reagan. So we haven't seen the reserves as low as they are right now, except when they were first created. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me that we're in the situation we're in. By the way, we never had to be in any of this situation, too. I remind you that all the time. We don't have to be dealing with this crap right now. And I think that's the biggest problem of it all. So the squeeze on consumers has, I guess, pushed President Trump's approval rating down, as one could imagine. I mean, why wouldn't it? I mean, he's talking about Joe Biden being the worst president of all time. I don't deny that at all. However, your approval ratings are lower than Biden's right now. You're on par with Richard Nixon at the height of Watergate, right before he resigned from office back in 1974. I mean, this is how unpopular Trump is with this war. So CNN can publish anything they want. Oh, 100% of MAGA love Trump. I mean, come on, folks. What the hell does that mean? I mean, be an individual first and foremost. But this idea, again, that, everyone is supporting this war, most people do not want this war. Most people do not like what they see when they go gas up now, all across the country. They don't like the higher food costs, the higher utility costs. They don't like this. They want Trump to focus on the United States, not what's taking place inside the Persian Gulf, especially a war we don't need to be involved in, which may ultimately push them into building a nuclear weapon. But only time will tell. All right, folks, so that's our economy right now. That's out of the Financial Times. Yep. And Trump said he's not worried about America's financials. So, interesting to hear that. I think he'll care about that come November when people go vote in the general election, though. So he's got that to think about as well right now. So as his popularity dwindles, as the support for this war continues to drop, which most people do not want, I think he'll have a different thing to say very, very soon, if he doesn't get his act together. All right, folks, got a few moments remaining in today's broadcast. Let me go over this article out of the Federalist. And it seems like we'll have a couple articles we won't get into today, unfortunately. We'll get to them tomorrow, though, on Friday's show. Don't worry. This comes out of the Federalist, though. It says here, the Southern Poverty Law Center used donor funds to pay Ku Klux Klan members to remain with the organization despite their insistence on wanting to leave, according to a new superseding Justice Department indictment. Isn't that nice? The so-called Southern Poverty Law Center that's supposed to be there to fight against racism and discrimination of people and protecting people has actually been giving them money in order to keep them doing things that are, again, illegal. Isn't that nice? There's so much racism in the United States, folks, that the Southern Poverty Law Center, all of whom belong in jail too, by the way, have been funding the KKK for quite some time. The new bombshell came as a part of a new DOJ filing first reported on Tuesday evening that expands on the allegations contained in the agency's April indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center. The far-left group known for putting targets on the backs of conservative organizations, falsely labeling them as hate groups, have now been charged with 11 counts related to allegedly making fraudulent payments to extremist groups like the Ku Klux Klan as part of a supposedly covert informant scheme. Now, this is amazing to me. Your job is to stop these groups, and yet you're funding them? Can you imagine that right now, too, by the way? Your job is to stop what's going on right now, and then you're putting money into this? Can you imagine if you're a donor like George Clooney, and these people are putting in money to keep racism alive and well? At least the facade of it in this country. There's so much racism, folks, you got to pay for it in this country. These people all need to be held accountable. They need to go to jail, folks. I think we all would agree on that. We shouldn't be seeing groups that take money doing this. It's completely disingenuous. Folks, thank you again for being here. I appreciate you so much. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco DeRay Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.